And I think we are live.
All right. I'm going to try to I'm going to try to tap into the chat so I can from your page if I can. I don't know if it's going to work. We're going to see. But
Oh,
anyway,
yeah.
either way. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay. All right, we are live.
We are live. We'll see if anybody's on. I made an announcement in my group, but it's during the
Yeah,
middle of the day.
true that. I told my group too, but I told them earlier this morning. And then I told the people that we have 4 on so far. YouTube did not send out my notification this morning, so maybe they're a little they ran late by 20 minutes. Oh, now we
Oh,
have
wow. Yeah, that's an issue. Oh, I've got Nicola. Is that how you pronounce your name? Is on. Malta.
hello.
Hello. So real quick, while people are hopping on, I'll talk more about this tomorrow too in my other live stream, but I was just telling Angie, I went to this, it's called the Midwest Craft Convention thing over the weekend. And it was so cool. And I met so many amazing women and 4 amazing guys. There are only 4 guys there. But, and one of the things that they were really big on was this whole concept of craftivism. It was the gal that coined that hashtag craftivism. So it was turning craft, basically having people turn their pain into their power and doing that through craft.
That's awesome.
It was really cool. And I thought how cool it would be to do for all of the artists that are out there, because I think there's a lot of us that are creative, that are healing, to just, I don't know, somehow combine forces and do something along those lines.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, we've got lots of people on.
Yes, indeed.
Susanna and Kitty and Healthy Love and oh my gosh, lots of people. Michelle and Shannon, it's my life. Welcome, welcome.
Hello, everybody. Hello.
Yes. And so you guys, I don't know if you remember me saying this last week, but this is something that Angie and I are going to be doing every single Tuesday. So I think we're planning on 1:30 in the afternoon normally, my time, but
yeah,
we're going to go with it and we'll see. We'll see how things shake out.
Yeah. So far, so good. So Nicola says her narc threatened everything yesterday. He said, "Oh, your friends are good. So now I'm phoning the police. Is the police a usual threat?" I think that's pretty common. I have somebody right now who's struggling with a similar issue. What about you, Dana? Have you seen the police used as a threat pretty often?
Oh yeah. Even fake, punching themselves in the face, cutting themselves, keying their own car and then trying to frame their partner. Anytime you're dealing with a person who's got power and control issues, expect them to continue to escalate to a point of ridiculousness where you're like, I feel like I'm dealing with a child, with an awful bratty child in an adult body.
Absolutely. So. Yeah. Oh, and then Rebecca's over here talking about both of you are amazing women. Thank you, Rebecca. And I could not have made it through the last year without all of you. That is awesome. Oh, and Malta says, yay, it's Angie and Dana. This is amazing.
Yes.
Love
Thank
it.
You. It's fun. Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to let you, I'm not trying to run your chat over here, lady. So start talking.
Hey, just hop in. This is totally new for me. So I figured we would just take questions from the chat and then, actually, before we do that, one more takeaway that I had from this craft convention that I thought was really so appropriate for all of us, especially, I think especially for women, but for people in general that I think are struggling with low self-esteem. And the concept was removing the word just from our vocabulary. And so, for example, somebody's saying, oh, well, I'm just a writer, or, I just knit, or I just have a YouTube channel, or I'm just a stay-at-home mom, and how so often we downplay our power and our strength, and to realize no, everything that I just said has power in it. And I guess to watch the words that we use to describe ourselves. Because when I was at this craft convention the whole time, I kept really downplaying things, and I kept saying things like, oh, well, I just write, and this is really you guys' world, and I'm just here to enjoy it, and to appreciate all of the craft stuff that you guys do. And and it was very interesting when that was brought to my attention of no, we're all creative, and we all have gifts that we can bring to the table, and to just own that.
Yeah, absolutely. I
So,
love that.
yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Shannon says she's working toward crafticism. She totally is. Yeah. She's in my mastermind group, actually. She's
Very
rocking.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Kitty Pons, Helene Rose. Hello. Hello. Nicola says she watches both of our channels and we're both awesome. We love you, Nicola. Thank you.
Yes. And
Uh,
then I got another message from Nicholas says, "Oh, yes, I've had the suicide threats." Then he sent me pictures of his son and saying, "Ah, he misses you." You
mhm.
know, hugs and kisses. Yes, nothing is sacred with these people. They will use their
Exactly.
children, they will threaten suicide. Um, you
You're
know,
absolutely right. Totally. Yeah. And they literally their children are extensions of themselves. You're an extension of themselves and nothing. You're absolutely right. Nothing's sacred. It's my
yeah.
life says she's pretending to do everything the narc wants her to right now so that everything is normal as long as she doesn't express her thoughts, emotions, and opinions.
I think sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. And it really is oftentimes like staging an escape from a hostage situation. Like you don't want to let the hostage taker know what you're doing. And um, you just kind of got to go along with it until you can get out of there. And so getting a safety plan in place and just pretending that everything is fine and knowing that you're working towards getting out of there. I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. And sometimes just knowing that you're working toward it is enough to keep you sane in the process, I think. You
I
know,
agree.
yeah. And I'll tell you what, this morning in my chat, Shannon mentioned, Shannon OBrien here mentioned that she has a no contact plan. And I liked that concept because, we all know we have a no contact plan, right? But to sort of put it all in writing, like she says, her husband reads her mail from her narcissist and then they throw it away, so that way, if it's anything she absolutely has to know, he can tell her, but otherwise it goes right in the trash. I think that's great. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Luna says, "Hello, Dana. Thank you so much for saving my life." Well, I know Angie, you probably get comments like that too on your channel, and it gets you here,
It
and
does.
it's comments like that just keep us doing what we're doing, and it's such an amazing feeling. And so I'm
It is.
glad.
Yeah. It's a
Glad.
validation, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh man, it's the best.
Agreed.
And Kitty asks, "Hey Angie, what is your channel?" Angie, you want to?
Yes, it's youtube.com/ Angie Atkinson. All one ANGIE Atkinson, ATKINSON. Yes, indeed.
And then I can put links down below after this video goes to YouTube and gets rendered and all that. I'll put links to all Angie's stuff below
Thank you.
as well. Yes.
I don't. Yes. Let's see here. Shannon OBrien agrees with you. She says language is very important. Our brain monitors all of our words. That's absolutely true. And AJ says, "Yeah, I'm just a mom." Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And, I think so many women say that about themselves, like, "Oh, I'm just a mom," or and it's, to me, that seriously is one of the most important sacred, I've been using that word a lot lately, sacred jobs that there is out there. And you are responsible for cultivating and nurturing another human being. Like
Yes,
that.
what a responsibility.
Wow.
Yeah.
And like that's just, I mean, it gives me goosebumps thinking about it. Like it's just such a cool thing.
Yeah. I always say it's the hardest job I've ever had and the job that I love the most. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
hardest, best job. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And
Yep.
it's, anybody can have children pretty much, but it takes a special person to actually be the role of a parent. And um you know it makes me sad too when people think that they can be so easily replaced.
Mm-hmm.
Like, "Oh, well, I'm just a mom." It's like, no, you're you, and you're so special to your child and to so many other people out there. So
Totally.
yes, so no more just anything.
Agreed. I like it.
Yes. And then Shannon asks, "Dana, can you please tell us the name of the woman who coined craftivism?" I just friended her on Instagram. Let me,
Mhm.
I want to say her name is Betsy, but let me see if I can find it while you guys are talking.
All right. So while she's looking that up, I'm going to tell you. Susanna says it's not amazing. It's amazing to not yield to hoovering. I haven't felt so strong in my life. I see all in an unusual clarity. I love that. And that's so true. When you learn all of the things, when you learn what hoovering is and you learn about why you should resist and how to resist, it's incredibly empowering. Did you find that name?
Yeah. Uh, Her name is Betsy Greer, and she's on Instagram as Craftivista.
Ooh,
Yes,
like
and she does amazing work. She had a whole um, presentation about the power of craft and in different countries all over the world, and how there was one, I forget, it was Argentina or someplace, where this was maybe about 10 or 15 years ago, people began going missing, and they didn't know why, if and the government wasn't looking into it, so they weren't sure if it was like human trafficking or like political murders or kind of kidnappings or what was going on. And these women began embroidering the people's names that were going missing onto like kerchiefs and wearing them. And it, it was just so powerful, because it was like, no, we know you, we know that that you're missing, and we
mhm.
care, and so we're trying to get this word out. And just the power, and then like the whole like AIDS quilt and all of these different craft projects that people have taken on, and just bringing awareness to different topics. It was just really powerful.
That's interesting that you mentioned the AIDS quilt. This has made me off topic, but
Yeah.
a really good friend of mine, he's in his early 50s and he's a gay man, and he was telling me the first time he saw the AIDS quilt, he's lost several friends to AIDS over the years, and the first time he saw the quilt, he kind of like was at some kind of a fair or rally or something, and he finally went ignored it for a while, and then he finally walked up on it and looked at it up close, and he said it just brought tears to his eyes, because even while he was telling me about it years later, tears to his eyes, because he said, they had like little personal effects on each square represented a person, and each square, like they might have a bow tie on one, or some personal effect from that person, part of an outfit or something that they would, something that represented them, and it just really affected him. It's very, very
It's
powerful.
powerful when you realize, when you can bring the humanity to
Hmm.
a cause, and you realize, oh, it's not just, domestic violence or a war or whatever. I remember when I was in seventh grade, we took a class trip to the Holocaust Museum. And of course, we read Diary of Anne Frank, and all of that's really, really powerful. But what really got me is they had an exhibit there, and it was shoes of people that had died in the Holocaust, and it was just this
Oh,
mountain of and it's still like, you just walk into this room, and it just hits you just how many people died. And um so I don't know, that's been something that's kind of been on my mind and on my heart after coming from that convention of, how can we really represent all of this narcissistic abuse. And I know with oh, what's her name in this chat, I know her by several names,
yeah.
Healthy Love and I were talking the other day about craft, because like I said, there's so many painters and knitters and all these different people in here, and how cool it would be to really represent this kind of stuff on
I love it.
a worldwide level. Yeah.
Mm. I love that idea. And I think that, you know, it's starting to get some recognition thanks to things like what we're doing, and World Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day and stuff like that. But on the flip side of it, there are still so many people every day who say to me, I had no idea until I found your website or your blog or your vlog or whatever, and I'm sure you hear the same thing. And so it's important to get the word out, you know.
Yeah, and I think the impact, because one of the things that tripped me up, and Kim is saying this too. She says, this is so life changing. I never learned it in school as a therapist. And I agree, Kim. I was a psychiatric nurse. And before that, I worked at a domestic violence agency. I've had, lots and lots of training on personality disorders and abuse and all of that. And it really took me going through it to fully understand it. And there is definitely this kind of disconnection between kind of the book knowledge and then the theory and the application,
Hmm.
and connecting those dots. And I think the more people that start kind of connecting those dots, the more we can all kind of move forward into healing on every level, whether a person's a therapist, a social worker, a life coach, a mailman, a teacher, whoever. It's whatever profession, like being able to spot this kind of stuff and bring that healing and awareness into their own life and into their community.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's why we do what we do, you know?
Yep. And Manju says, I'm going to be a future psychologist because of this. Good
Great.
for you. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. The more people that get, you know, that understand, the more people that, the more survivors who become psychologists and coaches and therapists, and the better it's going to be for the whole world. You know,
Yeah.
it's an effort. Yeah.
I agree. And Natalia says here, she says, last week I found out that my narcissistic boyfriend was cheating for the last 4 years. He was my first boyfriend, and for 8 years, I am so lost and nothing feels real. I do not know how to let go of the anger and disgust. What are your thoughts on that, Angie?
Well, it's got to start by recognizing it's okay to be angry right now if you need to be angry in order to propel yourself forward. Because when someone cheats on you, I mean, okay, let me just first say, like, a disclaimer here. I don't do cheating. If somebody cheats on me, I'm out, and that includes my current husband of almost, I guess we've been legally married 10 years now, almost 11,
Mm,
12, something like that. But uh, there's no cheating for me. So for me, when that happens, I'm out. So let me just say that before I say what I'm about to say. The fact of the matter is, there is statistically proven that if they cheat on you once, they're probably going to cheat on you again. And I feel like this: if I'm in a relationship and I'm told it's a monogamous relationship and that's what I signed up for, if they cheat, I'm out. And so in this case, I understand your disgust. I understand why you're upset. I understand why you feel devastated and all of those things. Take the anger and use it to propel you forward. Take it and use it to get yourself out, get yourself away, start your life again. It's not easy. It's gonna be difficult, but what are the chances of you moving on and moving forward? Let me know. Are you someone who can? Are you trying to stay with this person? Or are you trying to move on? I'm trying to see who said that, who answered that question, or who
that was
asked.
Natalia.
Natalia. Natalia, let us know. Are you thinking that you want to move on now and go forward, or are you just kind of stuck in the anger right now? And what do you think about the possibility of using it to propel you forward? What do you think, Dana?
Yeah, well, and I think you're right, Angie, that anger, all of our emotions are there to because they have a message for us.
Hmm.
There's a reason they kind of have their own intelligence oftentimes outside of our conscious understanding. So
Yes.
it's really important, and part of getting in tune with ourselves is to try to figure out, okay, well, what message is this emotion trying to give me? And anger is a very valid one. I would be concerned about you if you didn't feel anger and disgust. And so it's healthy and it's normal that you're feeling this way, and it does take time to kind of process those emotions to where they become more manageable. And it's normal for a person to be like, I am so full of anger or rage, I can't even see straight, I feel like I'm a changed person, I
Yeah.
feel like I'm hateful and mean, and I'm thinking thoughts and doing things that are not me. Like, this stuff is bringing out the worst in me.
Yeah.
And to, I think, try to prepare yourself as much as you possibly can and realize how you feel is normal. But like Angie was saying, let's try to channel that anger into something that's constructive and not adding more destruction to your life.
Yes.
So when I was going through all this, I really had to dig my heels in and just be like, I am not going to let this ruin my life. And you should have seen me. I mean, I was just like, well, I'm going to just channel this anger into positive ways. I was cleaning out my fridge. I was cleaning out my car. I was cleaning out junk drawers. I was painting walls. I was taking my dog for a walk like 4 times a day. Anything positive to just burn off
Hmm.
that extra energy it's moving yourself in that positive direction.
Yep. And another thing I would suggest, because here's what's going to happen: at some point, this person's going to try to suck you back in, most likely. So I would suggest that you sit down and you write down how you feel right now and put it in a drawer, because then when the person comes back and they're like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it, it didn't mean anything, and all the things they say, please take me back, or can we get back together, or whatever thing they want from you for supply, you can pull that piece of paper out and remind yourself how it feels, and remind yourself what you've gone through. I think that is a huge tool. It's a good tool. I use it with a lot of my clients. It's something that will help you in the future.
Yep, I agree. And even even if he doesn't reopen contact, if those feelings of nostalgia kick in, which is very normal, people tend to then start kind of getting lost in like, well, maybe I'm being too harsh, and I guess I wasn't perfect either. And well, what if he's not a narcissist? Like, what if he's just a lying, cheating jerk, right?
Yeah.
And then they're kind of just like, well, maybe things can work. And then in that moment of weakness, and they've had a few drinks, or it's Friday night and they're lonely, or it's a holiday, then they reopen contact, and then it's back into the cycle again. So
Excellent point. Yeah, absolutely. Important. Yes. Okay, so Healthy Love says her daughter started talking a bit about her dad being a narc with her friends, and we found out her friends also struggle with an abusive narc dad. That's interesting. How did that play? She said we need to be brave and speak up. Yeah, absolutely. And this is part of why we do what we do, and part of why you guys are, here. And Healthy Love, you probably just helped that girl feel not so alone, or your daughter did. You know, thoughts,
yeah.
Dana?
Yeah. Yeah. It's that, and that can be kind of a fine line to walk because, with narcissists, they don't, there's no sincere accountability for their part in things. And so then if, it's a hard line to walk between kind of validating kids and being like, yes, it's not right. And it's not fair that your father or your mother treats you this way. And it's a fine line between validating them and then getting back to the narcissist and them misconstruing it as parental alienation.
Mhm.
And so, I guess I would err on the side of just kind of validating them and not going into too much detail, but really talking about their the narcissist behavior in terms of, okay, like, let's think about your boundaries and your standards and your deal breakers and being treated with, I would talk about behavior.
Yeah,
And that way, because then that way too, they can use those skills for their life, for friends and relationships and stuff down the road. So they're not thinking like, oh, it's just my dad or it's
right.
just my mom. Like, no, it's these people exist, and we all need to learn how to really get in tune with like our boundaries, standards, and deal breakers before we go out into the world, because this stuff, as we all know, is really difficult to navigate when you're in the middle of it and you've got this emotional investment in a friend or in a significant other or a job, to realize, okay, this is problematic, I need to leave.
Yeah. And
So
something else that you can do as the mother of her friend, and I'll tell you this because this actually happened to me when I was a kid. I grew up with a narcissist parent, and I felt very not valid in the world. And I had a very good friend whose mother was like, one of those earth mother type women who just loved all the children. And she was so good to me and treated me so much like an extra kid that she really validated me like as a human being. I'm still in touch with her today. Like she was like my other mom, but she actually was nice to me. Uh, so you could validate that child, like Dana said, and kind of, make her feel a little bit special while she's in your home and stuff like that. I think,
hands down. And
yeah.
it's amazing too, kids learn so much by role modeling.
Hmm.
And sometimes, and how does the saying go? Something like, um, oh, people won't care what you say until they know that you care.
Hmm.
And I think that's so true with adults. And it's amazing just the time, like Angie was saying, just the time spent with a kid and letting them know, hey, good job on that. Or, just making them feel important and loved goes such a long way. And it's amazing too what kids pick up on and then how they start taking a different path and then relating to possibly to their own siblings differently, or their friends, or hopefully their own children differently, because they had that one positive adult in their life that just kind of brought it to their awareness of, being what being treated with dignity and respect actually looks like and what it feels like.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Let's see. I don't know if do you want to talk about things like the Florida shooter on your channel?
Sure.
Okay. Diana Back says the Florida shooter she thinks was antisocial personality disorder. She said his mother said before she died that he needs his meds, has ADHD, autism, and FASD. I think it's possible that he was ASPD. I mean, the fact is, what he did was sociopathic or psychopathic for sure. What do you think, Dana?
Well, as a psych nurse, he was the kind of patient that we oftentimes worked with. And what can be so difficult about that is he may or may not have been already diagnosed as antisocial, but he probably was diagnosed with like a conduct disorder of some kind. And it sounds like the police had been called, over 30 times to his house. I would imagine that kid probably had conduct disorders for a long time. He may or may not have had some mental illness going on, like outside of personality disorders. The challenge with stuff like this is if it's personality disorder related, there's not a lot that the police can do. Mental hospitals are mainly to help a person get stabilized,
Yep.
and they can really only get a person stabilized if there's mental illness. So something that medication can help with. Medication doesn't help with antisocial personality disorder.
Right.
And so really, I mean, what would have happened is, they could have taken him in as a danger to himself and a danger to others. He probably would have been on a 72-hour hold, if that, depending on the insurance he had. And then he would have been released again. Yeah. And because that's the hard thing with our society, isn't really, if like there's no victim, there's no crime. And it wasn't, as far as I'm aware of, it's not illegal for a person to own a lot of guns. And he was making a bunch of threats. So like all of the warning signs are there, yeah. But
it was, and the other thing that I heard was that, like they had reported it to the FBI, they had reported it to the school, like they had told a lot of people what they were worried about. But like you said, there wasn't a whole lot they couldn't just put him in jail for thinking about stuff, I guess, or whatever. So.
And they might have, if they'd handled it more appropriately, he probably would have gone on to some sort of 72-hour hold. And then he might have gone on to some sort of like, court appointed, mandated therapy, like weekly therapy. But again, I mean, it's scary. It's scary that there's this, unstable people like this that are walking around, and you can call the police and there can be all these warning signs and still nothing happens.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So. Yeah. Now, this is an interesting one, Dana. So Shannon Wallace says, please help. I need help and advice. The trial to dissolve the guardianship my mother has of my son is tomorrow. That's tough. I don't know what you think. Dana, what do you think about that?
So dissolving guardianship, who's the guardian?
Her mother has guardianship of her child right now, and she's trying to get her child back, is what it sounds like to me. Yeah.
I would just say I would go in with as much documentation as possible to prove your case and to prove why you should be allowed to have guardianship back. I would think about too, kind of what's in the best interest of the child. I don't know what all has gone on or, what the situation is there, but
she says she doesn't have a car or an attorney, and she doesn't even have a way to get there. What should she do? Shannon, I think as far as the car goes, take an Uber. And as far as not, that I would get there with or without an attorney, I would get there. If you don't get there, they're going to give her whatever she wants. Yeah. I think, yeah. So Uber your way over there, or ask a friend for a ride, or, Lyft, lyft.com is another one. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think making an appearance is going to speak volumes to the judge, and as will not being there.
Yes.
And even if they don't give guardianship back, I would see if maybe, can you get visitation? Can you get some sort of, access to your child? And
yeah. You have to show them that you want to be in that child's life and that you'll do anything to be in the child's life. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And again, I would focus on I don't know what the dynamic is with your mom, if she's a decent person or not, but depending on how long the child's been there, depending on if they have a good relationship, depending on like what's going to be in the best interest of the child, I would really kind of come at it from that angle. Because it can be traumatic for a child if it's a stable home and your mom's a decent woman, if the child's been there for any length of time and that's home for them, it can be a lot with them getting moved around. So, but at a minimum, I would still try to stay in your child's life and see if you guys can start maybe going to therapy, you and your child, and if the court can help with that and what you can do to still play an active role and, be in your child's life for sure.
Yeah. And don't overact in court, but when you go to court, be sincere, look the judge right in the eyes when they speak to you, and be aware that they may become irritated with you if you get too emotional, or, I mean, it's one thing to have quietly sobbing or whatever, but don't go in there and scream or act crazy, or overact, because it's really important that you stay calm and appear to be professional almost in that, but genuine and sincere, which is why I say look the judge right in the eyes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just a couple extra little tips. If you've ever been in family court, you know that it could go one of two ways. Chances are, if the judge likes you, that's positive. If the judge, feels like they have any reason not to like you, that's negative. So make sure you're dressed appropriately, no cleavage showing, wearing, nice, clean, well-pressed clothes, hair neat and tidy, all of that stuff is important. Little things.
And I would also let it be known in the court, and just say, you know what, because Shannon was saying, I turned guardianship over because she was sick, to let them know, this is what happened. This is why I turned guardianship over. I love my child. I want what's best for my child. I really want to be a part of their life. Mm-hmm. If I can't get guardianship back today, what are some steps that we could take that could be a possibility in the future, or that I could be more involved with my child in the meantime?
Absolutely. Excellent suggestion.
And show that you're trying to come up with a solution. It's not a power and control thing with your mother. It's not any other issue. It's, I want what's best for my child, and I want to make that happen.
Yes, I totally 100% agree. And I think that's probably the most important thing that either of us said here. That's important. Yeah, totally. Okay. I'm not trying to boss your thing, but I'm just going to go ahead.
Go for it.
Tell me to shut. Okay. So Pro Rohono says, how do I get away from a sociopathic stalker? This is a good one for Dana. We were together 8 years, been apart for 3. Now he's moved into my house, refused to leave, and convinced all my new friends that I'm socially inept. Dana, I'm going to let you start this because I think you have the best information on this.
Oh boy. Okay. So he's not really a stalker. He's a roommate, right?
That's what she says. Yeah.
Living in your house.
Won't leave. Yeah.
And that's really difficult. So depending on the state that you live in, you may have to file like formal eviction papers and to get this person out, even if he's not paying rent, even if he's not paying utilities. That's the legal way to go. The not so legal way to go would be to change locks when he's not there, but you can get in trouble for doing that. So, I don't know. It's tough. So I would say either you'd say, hey, you know what? You need to move out. I would document that. I would, you're going to have to get the police involved if it's an eviction kind of thing. So I'd give him 30 days notice if this isn't working. If he's a super scary guy and he's in your house, sometimes because all we have control over is ourselves. So there kind of comes a point where you might just have to move out. And if that means, I don't know if you're renting the house or if you own the house, but if you're renting it, it's a lot easier because then you can just tell your landlord like, hey, I'm moving out, and deal with any consequences that might come from that. But if you own the house, then you might have to tell them, hey, I would just say, hey, I've got to sell this house. I can't afford it anymore. And I'm putting it on the market, and it worked, and that sounds extreme, but these people are not easy to get away from. And sometimes extreme measures have to happen.
Absolutely. So, yeah. I think you're absolutely right on everything that you said. I want to add something on, Shannon added a couple details, and I think these are important details.
Okay.
She said her mother's a narcissist. Her child's not being fed. She has her child calling her mom. I don't know. Oh, the child's calling grandma mom. Okay. She has the Shannon's drug addict brother picking him up from preschool impaired. You've got to document that stuff, and you have to figure out a way to say it in court that doesn't make you sound like you're just being snotty about it. And I agree with Healthy Love that it's okay to express emotion, but do so calmly. And she's right about that. And I think that, yeah, being in court for over a year, and she's currently paying $800 a month already to the mother for taking care of the child. So would you add any different advice for what you just heard?
I think you nailed it with it's going to be all about documentation. Mm-hmm. I would ask the court if there's drug use going on, and if it's, they've got a person that's, under the influence picking up your child. I would ask the court if there's any way, if this person's going to be around your child, if they could be drug tested, that this home is not a safe environment for your child. If you know of anything going on that's putting your child in harm's way, I would consider calling CPS.
Yes.
And, just continuing to document. I would really, like Angie was saying, going in there and being as calm as you can emotionally, realizing you're going to be triggered when you go in there. It's going to be a very emotional situation. So to prepare yourself ahead of time for that, so you can respond instead of react. And to try to do, and I forget where this concept, it was a book we read in the book club that was great. And it talked about this concept of bookending. So it's like, if you know that you're going into some sort of difficult situation like this, to book in support. So getting support before you go in. So like that morning, whatever that might mean, or doing self-care of some kind, and then getting support and doing self-care afterwards.
Totally.
So, and then if you need, as far as like an attorney and stuff like that goes, maybe even asking the court, what kind of resources do they have, if any, for attorneys on a sliding scale, or for, and just see what resources they have. Generally, most courts have resources like that.
Absolutely. Hey, Dana, I'm going to step away for a quick second. I will be right back. And I think you should tell AJ what you think about your thoughts about psychopathic children who commit murder.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Right back.
Okay. So psychopathic children that commit murder. Yeah, that's difficult. I guess my thoughts on that is that it's, with most children that become violent at a young age, it seems to me that it's more of they've undergone a lot of either abandonment or trauma, which abandonment is trauma, or severe abuse at a very young age. And that's them lashing out. So, most children, they have attachment disorders at a young age when they have been abandoned, or they have, and they grow up in abuse. So that's very common. There was a study done a while ago about children in, I think it was Russian orphanages. This was, I want to say, back in like the 80s. And they found out, these babies, they weren't being touched or talked to, even though they were getting their basic needs met, like, food, clothing, shelter. They weren't getting that emotional nourishment. And that a lot of these children, when they were being adopted out, even if they were being adopted out when they were, 6 months old, they had major bonding issues with people from then on out. And it was just and that was kind of, I think, how this whole concept of attachment disorders really became a more prominent thing. Is, if a child, there's just certain windows of time, like if a person doesn't get kind of what they need emotionally and physically, it's like a plant, like, a plant, if it doesn't get enough sunlight, it just kind of grows in a different direction. And people are very much the same way. Like they just kind of, their personality just kind of takes a turn. And sometimes with enough therapy and with enough, guidance and love and all of that, they can kind of get back on track. But a lot of the times they can't. So it's really tragic.
Yeah. Hey, I'm back.
Hello.
Yes. Hello. Yeah. It is really sad with I want to say this about are you still in psychopathic children?
We just finished, but go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. One thing I want to say is that it's easy for me to think things like, well, what's their purpose in the world anyway? La, la, la. But then as a mother, I can also think, how would I feel if I was that child's mother? It's a hard call, right? I don't know. Anyway. Okay. I have no idea what you said, so I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Shannon was saying we were looking into adopting, but we heard so many parents who had adopted from Russia that were having serious behavior issues with their children, and we chose China. Yeah, it's when a child, and that's the thing, is because a lot of adoption agencies won't disclose kind of how the child was raised or what their conditions were like in that orphanage. And they might say that, yes, this child, I remember reading a story, this was a while back. She was a social worker who adopted a girl from, I think it was the Ukraine. And they had totally lied to her about this child's health issues and behavioral issues. Well, kind of long story short, this gal ended up having some sort of severe medical disease where they ended up having to amputate both of her legs. And it was just like heartbreaking. But it was a great story because, and this, both the mother and the child, it was just this, first 10 years of this child's life, it was a lot of behavioral issues, and a lot of physical issues. And it was just trauma for everybody. And, but they were able to get her into, therapy and kind of get her back on track. And now the gal is a para Olympian. And
amazing.
Yeah, so she ended up fine in the end, but it was a long, hard uphill battle with all of the emotional neglect and the physical issues and everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shannon's saying, there's virtually no info about the child when you adopt from a foreign country.
Yeah. Yeah. That's tough. The thing is, you can't, I don't know. Some of you guys might know this. My husband was adopted. He was found in a phone booth at birth.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. We know now that he's 78% British. So not from Russia, but he's all right though. He's okay.
Yeah.
but yeah, anyway, it's interesting. Adoption, the whole thing is interesting. Yeah. So Carol Wilkes says, and I don't know if how important is it to do inner child work to heal? Personally, I think you have to, especially if you experienced a narcissistic parent or major influence as a child. For me, it was like really huge. It was a really big, important part of the healing. What about you, Dana?
Yes, I agree completely. There was a gal on my channel who made the best comment the other day, and I'd have to go look it up and get her name in the comment and everything. But she had posted something about, it's those early childhood wounds that if those are not resolved, then we continue creating these patterns in our life or falling into these patterns in our life because we're taking action from a place of that wounding instead of taking action from a place of like a healthy adult.
True.
And until those wounds are resolved, we're going to continue repeating these patterns. So I think it's absolutely critical. And, I mentioned before many times in my videos, one of the biggest aha moments for me was realizing that I had been taking action with across the board, but mainly with friends and with men. I had been walking around feeling very unloved and very unimportant for pretty much my whole life. And so I was falling into this love bombing time and time again. That was my Achilles heel. And when I realized that that was what kept repeating and that was why it kept repeating, I was able to understand, to change the way that I viewed love bombing and that rushing of intimacy, because before I viewed it as ideal and now I view it as the problem that it actually is. And so now it's like, I get my emotional needs met in much healthier ways. I don't seek validation from outside, from men or from other people. And I'm able to move a lot slower. So for me, I didn't really necessarily require like a ton of work. It was, and there's other issues that I have that do, don't get me wrong, but like that one issue, just that kernel of knowledge, that aha moment was such a game changer for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
absolutely. Yeah. I had quite a few of those moments myself, those little aha things, but
yeah.
And I think, and we kind of talked about this when we did our interview the other day, but I think just in general, being able to like figure out what you actually believe and who you actually are, for me was a huge game changer.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And so, there's just so much to it. I mean, and then you have these aha moments and you're like, oh, well, no wonder my life wasn't working.
Right.
And the sad and the crazy making part of it all is I think there's so many people that are caught up in this, where it's sort of like that whole stereotype of, people have their midlife crises at about 40. And then they're like, well, wait a minute, who am I? And why am I married to this person? And why do I live in this town? And why do I work at this job? And, and then people don't know how to handle that. And so, the guy might go out and get a sports car, or a woman might go out and get a boob job, or however they handle that. Cause they're like, they don't even know. And of course the sports car and the boob job doesn't really solve anything, because it's
Right.
it's so much deeper than that. And then really learning to get in tune with, man, so many of us have been living this life of should, like from our what we thought our culture wanted or our peer group wanted or our parents wanted or our religion wanted, and that we didn't realize how derailed we had gotten. And then you start realizing, I don't know, yeah, but it's a big part of it, like getting in tune with your feelings and your thoughts and your emotions, and getting all of that into alignment to where you're really able to live a life of purpose on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I think it's a lot more rare than we think. And it's not just that narcissistic abuse survivors struggle with this. I think it's the vast majority of people struggle with it, but they live, what is that saying, that whole kind of lives of quiet desperation.
Mm-hmm.
I think most people live that and they don't even realize it. That's the kind of the almost the upside to going through all of this crap, is it's a bomb that blows your life
Mm-hmm. Wide open.
apart.
Yeah.
And most people aren't gonna make radical changes in their life because it sucks. Like,
Right.
it's expensive and time consuming and painful, and it's a lot easier just to stay in mediocrity. But when your whole life's blown apart, you don't have much choice than to start rebuilding. But like I've said before, the cool part in that is then you really get to choose, okay, well, which pieces am I going to rebuild with?
Yes.
And hopefully it's the pieces that you're like, you know what, this is who I am in this chapter of my life. Like, this is what I believe in. These are my hobbies. These are what I want my hobbies to be. These are the kind of people that I want in my life. And you're like, yep, this is my life. And I own every single brick of
Yes.
this new place that I'm building.
I was just thinking when you were saying, you said this is kind of the upside. I was thinking right in that moment, I was thinking, yeah, that's the silver lining. Same deal. It absolutely is. That is the good part. You get to something that most people never do, and that is to start brick by brick over from where and become and do and be and think and feel whatever you truly want. And
Yeah.
that's like, there's the beautiful side of it, of the healing part of it anyway. Yeah, for sure. Dana, Shannon had a question for you. She said,
Yeah.
when training to be a psychiatric nurse, do you learn about personality disorders?
Yes. So we did, and we learned a lot about mental illness. And so, as a psych nurse, a big part of your job is to kind of you're continually assessing people as they come in, and it helps if you can know that. It depends on the facility that you work in, but for us, it was outpatient, so we saw the same people every week, and so you could kind of tell like what their baseline was and how they're doing this week versus last week, and if something's kind of if something seems off about them. And so you've become very in tune with other people's behavior and kind of what's normal and what's abnormal. And um, the place where I worked was fantastic because we had a whole treatment team. So we had psychiatrists, we had therapists, and then we had psych nurses. So we were all very involved with our patients because we saw them all the time, and we had weekly meetings and all that. But like I said, every facility is different. If you're working in like a crisis facility, that's a little, that's different because you don't know what you're dealing with. You're dealing with people in crisis that you might only ever see once. And you don't know, like, is this normal for them, or are they on drugs, or are they, you don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so psychiatric nurses in general, you have to do a lot of continuing education credit classes. I forget, it's like 12 credit hours every year in order to keep your license. And so you would know if you were to go into psychiatric nursing, then you're going to a lot of the same classes as the therapists and the psychiatrists to continue to keep your license up to date. So
Right on. Yeah.
yeah.
Somebody suggested that some of these, that they feel like a feral cat. Montana Sammy Jo said, I've been diagnosed PTSD, DID, RAD, and even after a decade of integration therapy, I still feel like a feral cat. My mom doesn't seem repentive of the abuse she did on us girls. I have never really seen a narcissist ever be repentive for anything unless it was convenient for them in the moment, and it was a manipulation tactic. But do you want to comment on what she said about feeling like a feral cat? I think that's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah. Um, I think when a person goes through so much and trauma is transformative, and it can really cause a person to feel like an outsider in their own life. I think that's one of the very common things that many of us that have gone through narcissistic abuse for any length of time really struggles with, is trying to reintegrate all of these pieces of themselves. There's, I think it might have been, well, there's two books if you're a book reader that I highly recommend. One is The Body Keeps the Score,
Mhm.
and the other one is the book by Pete Walker, the CPTSD book, From Surviving to Thriving.
Mhm.
That, if you only can read one, I would read the Pete Walker one because it's fantastic, and he talks a lot about kind of helping people reintegrate all all of the pieces back into a cohesive whole. But I think a lot of moving forward is in reclaiming your power and just being like, okay, you know what? I've got a lot of these things that make me feel very different from other people, but I'm in control of my life and I need to start, really kind of just creating it for myself. And I think the more that you can take ownership in that and be responsible for building up a life that you love, the less that you're going to kind of feel like a feral cat.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. And I know she, Montana Sammy Joe has been over on my channel. I know she's working on it, so she's getting there. But I kind of get it. And I know, we all go through, even I still today go through days where I don't feel that great. And I have those, I never compared it to being a feral cat, but I felt confused and lost even, for example, a few months ago now, my mother showed up right before Christmas, showed up at my door with a package, and I haven't been in contact with her for a long time, and showed up at my front door. My children answered the door, and the package was a family photo of my family, that
Mhm.
she had been with me when we had them taken, and and I had purchased the same photo in the same size, and she knew this for sure. And but she brought it over and she gave it to me, my children, and she said this was their Christmas gift. And it was clearly the photo that had once hung on her wall. There was still dust on the top of the frame.
Huh.
uh, it was totally an effort to, to mess with my head, I think, and to mess with their head. So I went through a couple of days of what the heck is wrong with that lady. I wasn't like totally destroyed by it, but because I know who she is and I know what she's all about, and I know exactly what that was, really bothered my husband. He called her up and, well, he texted her and told her what, what he thought. And I told him that was a waste of time. But, and when she did respond exactly how I told him she would, he stopped. So that was good. But yeah, I'm just saying I understand that feeling as well. Um, you know. Okay. X tell me if I'm like over
No, you're
step.
good.
Okay. Um, Exoc K says to Shannon, also the nonstop manipulation, exclusion, rampant abuse, endless political, economical, and police tactics against minorities. Oh, then telling them that it's all overblown. I think there's certain amount of a certain amount of truth to that. And I don't really want to comment on it too much because but I know for sure that there's such a thing as I don't really like to talk politics at all, but I know there's such a thing as that. And I know that, um, yeah, I'm not saying it. Dana.
Yeah, there's just there's not a lot of information out there about abuse, and much of what is out there I think only really paints a very kind of limited picture. And so yeah, it's very difficult to find police and um, really anybody in the mental health field, frankly, that's truly familiar with abuse um, and judges, and it's a problem across the board. And yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Shannon says, "LOL, Bill. Thank you for looking out for Angie. That's my husband."
Oh.
Yes, you're right, Shannon. He did. He was all upset, but that was unnecessary because But it was sweet that he cared enough to be upset, I guess. Um, yeah, Bonnie says, and this is something that I think is really, really. She says, "You see the iceberg there, but you can't seem to find the strength to turn it around. The shop is too big, too heavy, and you become, I think she means ship, and you become enlightened late in the game." And I know, I don't know if you if you know Bonnie, but her situation is that she's been in this marriage a really long time, has adult children, is also taking care of her ill narcissistic mother, and is living in silence with this person.
Mm.
So I would love to hear what your advice would be for Bonnie if you have anything you want to share with her.
It's difficult. It's difficult.
Yeah.
There was a woman at this craft conference that I went to this past weekend who was in a very similar situation, been married for 38 years. And, she's just starts telling me all about her husband and how awful he was and just this horrible living situation. And, I can imagine, I can imagine how difficult it would be to try to untangle from that. And especially when you feel like you're kind of roped down by taking care of this, a narcissistic woman that's also there. If you're feeling like, okay, now you're not ready, willing, or able to leave, at a minimum, I would try to find some peace in your life. So it kind of goes back to the whole changing what you can change. And so maybe that means giving yourself some time at night to take a bubble bath, or giving time to go to bed a little bit early, or to see if you can get some additional care workers in there to kind of give you a day off from taking care of her. Or,
and from my former career, I know that Medicare and Medicaid will sometimes help pay for those.
Yes. Yes. And so just kind of carving out these chunks of time for yourself and be like, okay, maybe I can't, maybe I'm not ready to leave. Maybe I can't leave. Maybe I don't want to leave, but what can you do? And getting peace into your life a top priority. It's not a luxury. It really isn't. Like, it is a necessity to have that peace and calm in your life.
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, I have got to actually get ready to wrap up here, Dana. I'm supposed to be somewhere a minute ago. Are you staying or are you going?
I'm gonna go too. And so we will see you guys next week over on Angie's channel. So Angie Atkinson over on YouTube. Yep. I think we're gonna go 1:30, right? Eastern?
Yes.
Next week?
Yes.
Okay. 1:30 Eastern next week over on Angie's channel. I'll make an announcement in my Facebook group, and I think Angie will do the same.
I will.
So we are signing off. You guys, thank you so much for joining us. Lots of love to you. As always, you are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Okay.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. See you soon. Okay.
Oh, wait, hold on.